Hi guys, thanks for tuning in today. Here I have an engine. This one came out of my 56 oval window Beetle, VW Beetle barn find I found. It was stored in a barn since 2001. So 23, 24 years this has been sitting without being run at all. And mice living in it. And it does turn over smooth. I checked that. This is a 1600. So this is like early 70s. It's a universal case. It's a 1600, but it is a single port. They do make a single, and then they went to a dual port. It had two intakes. This is a single, but like I say, this is a universal case. This can go bus or Beetle. It has the mounts for the bus. This is just a replacement case that they offered later, probably in the 80s, late 70s, 80s. This got put in, but it still has a generator. Doesn't have an alternator. So we'll go through it. Like I say, it turns over well. Everything seems to have functioned right. He did say it ran. They drove it into the barn in 2000. So they shut it off and it just sat. So we'll go through it, do a little walk around here. This is the single port. We'll take the plugs out, do a compression test. We'll also go through the valves, check the valves. Like I say, if he said it was running, so they should be okay. There were mice living in here that corroded the case some, and I took all that out. I actually lifted this fan shroud up and blew through the cylinders, so I got all the crap out of there. So we got airflow through the cylinders. I'm walking around. It's mounted on my engine start stand, so I'm kind of optimistic it's going to run. This is just a stand made from angle iron and some metal plate with a bus housing bolted to it, so it can we can fire it up on the stand. This here's a 6-volt starter. We'll switch to a 12-volt. The 6-volt, well, a 6 and a 12-volt stock starters had a bushing in the front. It's actually supported. That's the front support for the armature in the starter. So when this bushing wears out, it can actually short the starter out, and it won't work. So they did make this. Here's what I have this is a Porsche 914 starter, and we'll put this in there. This is self-supporting, so it actually has the bushing inside the starter, so it doesn't need the external bushing. So we can throw that in there, and then we don't have to mess with replacing the 6-volt bushing in here. Those are two different sizes, the 6 and the 12. So we'll do that. I have an oil light on here. This is the start button, and this is the main on and off, giving it power to the distributor and that. This is just a fuel tank off a Lawn Boy lawnmower. So we'll hook that up. This here also has the what they call a doghouse fan shroud with it. This is an external oil cooler. Before this oil cooler was actually located inside of the fan shroud. So what happened would be the airflow through the fan shroud would actually be obstructed by the oil cooler. So number 3 cylinder would run really warm. So what they did is move it outside of the fan shroud to allow more airflow down to these cylinders here. So the coil hopefully is good. I haven't tested anything. The carburetor will need to go through. We will take the cover off, just clean out the bowl and the jets we can get at. The distributor, I'm sure we're going to have to clean the points, maybe replace them. I have extra points if we need them. Probably just need a cleaning. This is the vacuum advance. We'll hook that back up. That's not critical. It'll start without that. Spark plug wires. Mice have been chewing on them. So hopefully put some tape around that. We'll do an oil change. I always like to do an oil change on motors that have been sitting, over 4 or 5 years. This one's been sitting 20 some. So what happens with the oil is the additive package actually separates and flows out of the oil. So you're left with just a base oil, or mostly a base oil. A lot of the additive package, especially the good stuff like the zinc, the moly, all the anti-wear properties of that oil fall out of it, and then you're left with just the base oil, which is still a lubricant, but it doesn't have those important vitamins needed, especially in a pushrod engine where you have higher pressures on the lifters and the cam. So we'll take that oil out, put some fresh oil in. Plus, oil 20 years ago is a lot different than oil today. It's quite a bit better now. Put some Valvoline racing oil in there. That's what I always use, the VR1. It's perfect. It's still a mineral-based oil. It's not synthetic base oil in it. And it runs really good in these air-cooled engines. That's what I use. If you have an idea, if you have a comment, put it in the comments on what you use. But the VR1, I've always had good luck with it. I've actually sent in oil samples to get analysis done on them. It's by far the best that I found for limiting wear, the least amount of wear metals in the oil sample that I got back. Works pretty good. So that's what I'll be putting in. First thing we'll do is drain the oil, and then we'll go on to compression, adjusting valves, and then messing with the carburetor and the distributor, and we'll see what we get. Okay, the oil drain plug is right here. There's actually an oil screen with these 10mm nuts. We'll take those off, drain the oil first, then we'll take the screen off and check it. This is a 21mm. That was hardly on there. Oil's pretty black. Doesn't look like there's any metal in there though. That's good. No chunks so far. We'll really find out when we take the strainer off. Usually the metal chunks get caught in that strainer. And those are barely on there too, almost hand tight. So here's the strainer. This is usually where the metal and sludge would be. It's a little bit. Not too bad at all though. You can definitely see this was running when it was parked. Strainer's a little beat up here, but there's no chunks. So it looks like we'll be good to go. We'll clean this up in the parts washer and put it back on. So we'll swap the starter out here with the 12 volt. So here you can see the shaft that spins in that bushing. So this is actually loose. And it requires that bushing to hold that armature in place. And then here's the 914 starter that doesn't have that shaft. It's self-supported. I also have this fused. Okay, so now we'll take a look at this distributor. Cap looks pretty good. Rotor, we'll just clean that up with a little Scotch-Brite. Yeah, the points look pretty rough. Definitely go through that with a points file. That looks pretty good. Now I just hit it with some contact cleaner. I like using the contact cleaner because it dries really quick and doesn't leave a residue. So we'll spin it around, get the points on one of these lobes. So I have the points. There's a piece of plastic that rides on this can, and I have it right on the lobes so it opens the points, and we'll check the gap. 16 thousandths is what they recommend. And it's a little tight. So we're going to open it just a hair. 16 thousandths is basically like a business card you could use. People also use that. If you're in a bind. So there we have it adjusted now to 16 thousandths. It's a tight 16. So this here is your adjustment. You can move this and it'll open and close the points gap, and then with the other hand you gotta tighten it down and then check it. So it's a little bit of a trial and error. So we got it good, and it's right on the cam, so it's at the highest point. So that's been filed and adjusted. So we should be good there. So just clean the contact up with some Scotch-Brite and a little bit of contact cleaner. We're going to actually grease this lobe up a little. This here is just a little dielectric grease. Then we'll make sure they're going to the right cylinders here. On the distributor there's a little notch here, and that's going to be your number 1 cylinder. So you want this rotor pointing right at the number 1 spot on the distributor. And then on the pulley, there will be a mark. There's a mark notch right here, which I'll highlight with a paint pen. And that coincides with this right here. So you want that flush with the seam of the case. So we know that that's number 1 cylinder, top dead center. So now we can kind of check these wires, get them going to the right cylinder. So this here is number 1. So on a Volkswagen, it goes 1, 4, 3, 2, or 1, 2, 3, 4 if you go backwards. So this here is going to be number 2. So 1, 4, this is number 4. And number 3. This one goes to the coil. So those are good, and we'll move on to checking the valves. So this bail just pops down. This is a screwdriver. If you're in a car, you can tie a rag to it to pull it down. If you can't get in there with a screwdriver. And there might be some oil behind here, but there's usually not a ton. So it looks really clean in there. So now that we know we're at top dead center, this is number 1 cylinder here. It actually has a number 1 stamped on the shroud here. This should be loose. You should feel a little bit of space in there. And these feel pretty good. We'll go in there with a feeler gauge and check them. So what we're shooting for is 6/1000ths of a gap here. And they're pretty loose. So these are 13 millimeter. Sometimes they're 14s, depending on the year. You just want to back those off, loosen them up. And then we're just going to turn the adjuster in. Turn it in till you can't pull it out, and then just back it off a little bit. You just want a little bit of drag like that. Then what I do is hold this and tighten this up. And these don't have to be super tight. You just don't want them to come out. And then double check it that you got just a nice drag on it there. So that's good to go. I'll do the rest of them, and then we're on to the carburetor. So first thing we'll do is take this air cleaner off. And this is an oil bath air cleaner. This is an earlier air cleaner for this motor. So this is kind of a Frankenstein motor. screws way in the back. Oh, it's not even on there. It should have been on like this here. And here's the clamp. And then this just opens with these clips. And there's a filter in here, and this gets filled with oil. So when you change your oil, you're supposed to not only change the oil in the engine, but also in the filter. So this, I'm sure, is gummed up on the inside, so I'm just going to take it apart. Take off the distributor to get access to that back bolt. This is always nice if you had one of those S wrenches to get at. This bolt in the back. So we'll take that to the bench and give it a quick cleanup. Okay, we'll take a look at this quick. I don't have a gasket kit for this, so I gotta be real careful with it. So immediately the gasket tore. So nothing in there other than a little bit of dust. That's been sitting a long time. Here's the main jet. To put this in a vise to get the jet out of the holder. So the main jet's clear. These here have an electric choke where there's a coil in here that heats up, and then it'll open the choke automatically. We'll check the accelerator pump. So this here will have to come off to get the accelerator pump off. Oh, that was just in there loose. Here's the diaphragm, and that would not work. It's solid as a rock. Okay, so I couldn't find a new accelerator pump diaphragm, so I just took the old one and soaked it in some, this is just some seal conditioner, and I got it to be okay. It'll at least work. It's not torn. If this was going in a good engine, we'd want to put a rebuild kit in here, but we're going to use this for now. So I'm going to put it all back together, and I'll bring you back when it's done and we're putting it on the car. And here you can see the accelerator pump's working. So that diaphragm worked. Just put some carburetor cleaner in there. Now we'll hook up some fuel line. The in is the top and the out is the bottom. I marked it on there. So this one's going to the carburetor. We'll trim that a little bit. I just trimmed this fuel line with tin snips. And then this is the inlet from the gas tank. Now the next step is vacuum line. This is just 4mm vacuum line. It's going to go from the distributor to the carburetor, right there. So we'll trim it there. Like I say, that's not too important for just getting it started. But if you were running it for real, you'd want that attached. It advances the distributor at the higher RPMs when it starts pulling more of a vacuum. Now we'll pull the plugs and take a look at the plugs and then also do a compression check. I should put some tape on here where the mouse ate through there. So I'll take a plug out and take a look at it. It's in there pretty loose. Not too bad. A little on the carbon side, a little on the rich side. So here's the plugs. They all are in pretty much the same condition. Running a little on the rich side or just burning some oil. Definitely not too lean, but they're all consistent. Alright, we'll do a compression check now. So that's real good, almost 150 on a VW engine. So that one's a little low, 80. I'm guessing the rings are probably stuck on some of them. That's why that one came in a little low. We could try putting some oil down there and see if it jumps up. Yeah, 140. Okay, I'm going to take the fuel line off the carburetor, just see if the fuel pump is pumping. We'll see if we get some fuel. Yep, it's pumping. So we'll spin it over a little bit, prime the carburetor, check for any leaks. So this is the oil we're going to use, VR1. It's actually pretty cheap. Usually when they put racing on it, it adds a few bucks to it, but this stuff is cheaper than Mobil 1. So I'll put a belt on quick. The belt is adjusted with shims. So you just move them from the inside to the outside, depending on how tight you want the belt. It's just how far in and out it presses on the belt. We'll start with that and just see how it looks. It's a little bit of trial and error. So that's pretty good. Got the first try. It's pretty high up on here though. This belt's a little worn. It's the belt that came with it. The engine doesn't need the generator to run electrically, but it is driving the fan. So if your generator goes out, your fan goes out, and then you overheat. So you really need the generator. It serves two purposes, electrical and cooling. Give it some fuel. Okay, we'll give it a shot. Got everything hooked up. Belt, it's on. Carburetor's primed. Gas getting to it. Electrical's good. We got spark. We got power where we need it. We'll head compression pretty good. A couple cylinders are a little low, but I think it's just due to the ring sitting. So we'll fire it up, see what happens. Try to at least. This is the oil warning light. This should go off when we get oil pressure. Rest of the mouse nest came out. Let's see if that was just a loose connection on the oil. Could have been. Oh, actually it's grounding out on, it's melting through. That heated up really fast. Ice nets are flying out of it. Running good. Yeah, so there you have it. Can't believe it. Fired right up after 24 years of sitting in a barn. These Volkswagen engines are just bulletproof. This didn't take much work at all. The carburetor was the hardest part. Otherwise, it was just kind of a cleanup. Getting all the mice evicted. And a bunch of this flew out when it started up. So hopefully that's all of it. And it runs really smooth. No knocks, no rattles. Fires right up with one or two cranks and it fires up. So nice engine. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Maybe someone can use it. So, but thanks a lot for watching. Please subscribe, give me a like, and we'll see you next time.